Hello. Hello, good afternoon once again. Thank you for your indulgences. I'd ask for 10 minutes. I will need 2. So we're almost ready to start. The whole panel is here. And I'd like to ask the panel members to join me on the platform. And let's get this afternoon up and running.
Oh, guess I'll be light up in my feelings. Hello. And now when your lights. No, that's not mine. It's like just Let's see the opposite side.
Baron, you want to go closer with this light?
I would like it to go closer.
Everybody good? Everybody okay? And I
Good afternoon to all of you here in person and to those joining us online. I am Dr. Marsha Pierce, lecturer in visual arts at the Department of Creative and Festival Arts. I'm also Deputy Dean for Distance and Outreach at the Faculty of Humanities and Education. It is my pleasure to welcome you to UE Outside, a three-part carnival series hosted by the Department of Literary, Cultural and Communication Studies and the Department of Creative and Festival Arts here at the UE St. Augustine campus. We are literally outside this afternoon, situated under this beautiful salmon tree, but we want to use this location to get an inside look at Carnival, to explore the festival closely through a series of panel discussions, starting today and continuing over the next 2 Fridays. Trinidad and Tobago's Carnival is an important site of political negotiation and contestation, involving a multiplicity of meanings, displays, strategies, tactics, and structures of governance that shape and influence the ways in which participants view and negotiate their social worlds. The current commentary on Carnival in the public domain suggests that the festival is at a new crossroads, specifically as it relates to the types and levels of public participation. The growing cost to participate, the stark boundaries between the traditional and contemporary masquerade, the growing urban-rural divide in resource allocation, and the growing agglomeration of business activities in every aspect of the festival, particularly in the areas of the music and masquerade. These factors also impact the Carnival's capacity to act as a critical site of liberation and justice, arguably one of its main socio-political benefits. We believe that it is vital for the UE to be seen as an important stakeholder in these ongoing discussions, given its role in training and education in the carnival arts, as well as its expertise in festival and cultural development. In this regard, we launch UE Outside with the first conversation titled, Who Owns Carnival? Chairing the proceedings today is Dr. Douglas Wade Brunton, lecturer in communication studies. Dr. Brunton is a digital ethnographer, specifically interested in the relationship between media, culture, and identity in a global context. I invite him now to share more on today's conversation and to introduce our esteemed panelists.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to start by thanking you for taking the time to fight through traffic, find a park, and get here on campus. For those of you that are joining us online from various parts of Trinidad and other parts of the world, thank you for taking the time. So as I have been introduced, my name is Douglas Brunton, and I am Communication Studies lecturer and the moderator of today's panel. So to discuss the question of who owns Carnival, we've invited 4 practitioners, artists, professionals to talk about it from their perspectives. And I'm going to take the time to introduce them. So furthest out, we have Mr. Keon Delas. Keon holds a master's in music degree from the Northern Illinois University and a legal education certificate from Sir Hugh Wooding Law School. He also holds a Bachelor of Arts in Musical Arts, a Bachelor of Laws degree, and a postgraduate certificate in University Teaching and Learning. All of these from UE St. Augustine. He is, on top of everything else, currently pursuing a PhD in Cultural Studies at UE, where his research focuses on Trinidad and Zest music and the socioeconomic factors driving these genres. He is a lecturer in music at the Department of Creative and Festival Arts and is a multi-instrumentalist, a music producer, songwriter, and avid composer. Keon is also an attorney at law who specializes in entertainment and intellectual property. To his immediate left is Kim Curtin, the founder and design chief of the Communications Architect Limited. Her architectural designs can be found not in buildings, but in distinct strategic marketing communications experiences curated for brands that strive to be exceptional. With over 15 years of marketing communications experience, Kim has served as lead consultant for some of Trinidad and Tobago's most well-known, sought-after brands, spanning the entertainment, events, culture, and tourism sectors. She describes herself as an avid marketer, a wannabe health buff who happens to be a type 1 diabetic, and like all of us, a work in progress. Next to Kim is Harmony Farrell, a digital content producer and creator, educator, award-winning writer, performer, researcher, and carnival enthusiast, with a keen focus on Caribbean culture, media, and the arts. Among her publications is her dissertation, The Spirit of Bacchanal, which was published in the International Journal of Carnival Arts. And in this project, she conducted a comparative study between the traditional and contemporary masquerades of Trinidad's carnival in order to theorize the similarities rather than their differences. Her current master's research is groundbreaking in its uniting of digital culture and carnival and festival studies. To my immediate right is Mr. Wendell Roger Manwaring. Most of us know who he is, but he is also a singer, writer, actor, producer, teacher, sound designer, and director. He's been involved in the theater and the performing arts for 35 years and has had the opportunity to work with and learn from the very best in Trinidad and Tobago and the Caribbean. Having cut his teeth, so to speak, as a member of the now defunct Trinidad Tent Theatre in 1985 under the direction of Helen Camps, Mr. Manwaring has since gone on to work closely with such luminaries as Peter Minshall and the Callaloo Company, Derek Walcott and the Trinidad Theatre Workshop, and Noble Douglas and the Lilliput Theatre, to name a few. As a founding member performer, and producer with the cutting-edge Rapso crew, 3 Canal, Mr. Manwaring continues to challenge his growth and development as a contemporary Caribbean artist in the world today. So can I ask you to please welcome the panel one more time? So once I finish my introduction, each of the panelists will have a chance to make an opening statement, and the intent is to let the conversation grow organically. I have further provocations to keep the conversation flowing, and we are encouraging you to use the hashtag #WhoOwnsCarnival on Instagram and X or Twitter, depending on how old you are, to ask questions or to make comments. For our live audience, we'll open up the panel to questions and comments as we go along. We ask that comments and questions be generative and respectful. And with that said, let's go. So to set the frame for today's conversation, the panelists were sent a provocation to get their thoughts moving. And I thought it fair to put us all on the same page that I'll read it out now. So, to the uninitiated, Trinidad's Carnival corresponds to Bahktin's 4 senses of the Carnivalesque, in that there's a familiar and free interaction among people as they come together in Carnival misalliances, where they indulge in eccentric or socially acceptable behavior without consequence. For those of us paying attention, however, this stage on which, as Chalkless writes, violent struggle, festivity, oppressive legislation, ethnicity, religious differences, discrimination in education and employment, cultural resilience and creativity, communal work habits and ritualization was traditionally commented on, celebrated, and shared through participation. This stage has transformed. Capitalism has collided with celebration, and joy has been commodified. Conspicuous consumption seems to be the focus of the season, and those without the social and financial capital to participate become a resource to be used as seen fit to ensure the comfort and security of those who can afford to pay to play. Capitalism is about supply and demand. The more conspicuous the consumption, the greater the demand. In the era of social media, individual joy is captured, distributed, and made viral, often as part of the price of admission. So, given where we have found ourselves, the question arises, who owns Carnival? And I would like to ask Wendell to start us off.
Well, you asked me first, boy. Good evening. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. It's a joy to be here. My immediate response is nobody owns Carnival. As a matter of fact, I refuse to even engage the discussion with the use of the word own and the concept of ownership. You know, it's like when the Indians encountered the white people and they was trying to buy the land for beads and they didn't understand that transaction, right? So I don't engage the Carnival from that perspective. I begin from the fact that Carnival is an inheritance and we are rather custodians. And I think with custodianship, there's an added responsibility. With ownership, we could afford to be careless and say, that is mine, I can do with it what I want. But if we were to approach it from the concept of this thing predates us, people fight for it, people die for it, people exercise their imagination in little varied forms for it, and we are beneficiaries of all those efforts. And it is up to us now, in whose hands it may reside for a moment, to do something with it respectfully. And we are tasked with understanding what it is and innovating within that space as well. Because the Carnival is not a dead, static thing. It's a living, dynamic ritual. It's a living thing. And so the question of ownership doesn't arise for me to say that we own it would be extremely grandiose, narcissistic, vulgar, vainglorious, and just wrong. So that's where I start.
All right. Thank you so much. Who would like to continue? How many?
Sure. I feel like when you're in school and you say, sir, It's my answer. I thought I had my opening statement in check, but apparently I don't. I agree with a lot of what Wendell said there, particularly about the carnival being something that is changing, living, breathing, evolving. And I'm particularly interested in talking about how we deal with that, because I feel as though the conversation is often, as the provocation presented it as well, as though the contemporary is something that is bastardized, and we kind of throw out the baby with the bathwater to say that it's all just going down the drain. So I'm very interested in speaking about that, particularly for me as somebody who I think is involved in the carnival in a lot of different ways. And I embrace some aspects of the contemporary, and I also am critical of many aspects of it. So I'm really very interested in that particular angle of the conversation. So I would agree. I can't fairly seek to answer that. Who owns Carnival? We sort of all do, and we sort of all don't.
Good afternoon, everyone. I want to start by thanking Dr. Burke and the UE for inviting me to share my perspective and my experiences within this carnival space. I'm happy to be among this esteemed panel and among carnival advocates. I assume that everyone is a carnival advocate in the audience. I just want to quickly start by saying that my love for this industry has sort of come out of my love for another industry, which is the tourism industry. For many years, all I desired was to welcome visitors to our shores and to have them experience everything we experience, not only on Monday and Tuesday, but in the build-up of the festival season. Everything that we see, everything that we smell, the doubles of food, everything that we are able to visualize, everything that we are able to feel, I have always wanted for them to feel. But, you know, the feeling of carnival, for me, what is carnival? What is it? And for me, it is a feeling. And as cliche as it may sound, it is a feeling and a sense of freedom. And when we look at the question, who owns carnival? I want to put forward a second question. Can anyone own something that is free? So I share Harmony and Wendell's sentiment that the carnival cannot be owned. But if I have to take off the devil's advocate hat and maybe give an answer, if I'm forced to give an answer, I would say, like Harmony would have mentioned, that the carnival is owned by the people, by us, by you, by me. And who else? Who else is it makes up the people? The pan man, the masquerader, the coconut vendor, the doubles are feeling like I'm probably hungry. You know, the Mokojambi, the masquerader, the designer, the band leader, the fed promoter, even if we may not want to acknowledge it, the soca artist, it's owned by us. We are the people. We, and without us, carnival would not be what we know it to be. So I gave you two perspectives. I'm sorry I didn't give you a straight answer.
No problem. Hi, good evening, everyone. I think I am going to be the real devil's advocate on this panel. I agree and disagree. Here, my disagreement. I agree that no one should own Carnival. And in some ways, no one does own Carnival. And I would like to put forward that Carnival is owned by the people, but it is also owned by the power structure. And without getting too deep into it, of course, being a part of Carnival in so many different aspects over the years, I would have had the opportunity to interact with what Carnival is in Trinidad and Tobago in different, different pockets, different perspectives I would have had. And finally, this year, I was afraid that my Trinidad and Tobago passports would have been revoked because I never played mass. And I say before they take my citizenship, I had to play mass this year, right? So this is my first year playing mass. And I think getting to play mass more solidified my thoughts on who owns Carnival and who doesn't own Carnival. So without getting too deep into it, I would say, I'm gonna try to make this as basic as possible, but make my stance as basic as possible. And when we get into the discussion, maybe I could elaborate more. Some aspects of Carnival, for example, Pan, I would say is still owned by the people. Pan, all night mass, Monday night mass, owned by the people. When it comes to masquerade, plain mass, soca, calypso, and these things, not owned by the people. Capitalism, capitalists own that. And being on the road for Carnival, instead of just feeling that joy and euphoria, I felt strange looking at people at the side of the road. And I remember me looking at mass, going into Port of Spain and looking at people playing mass to see the costumes and enjoy what that is. While I was in a band this year and looking at people on the outside, they looking at us like we can't afford to be there. And these are the people who have money to play mass. And we wish we could have this opportunity and we just have to be here. And I felt like a spectacle, people taking videos and pictures of you, not because they're so enjoying what it is, but it's like it's a status that they can't touch kind of thing. And more than I felt that Carnival is being taken away from the people in that aspect and more owned by the capitalists and, you know, people who have the money could be part of Carnival and other people not getting that opportunity. So for me, some parts owned by the people, most sides, I think, being usurped by those with the power and the money.
All right, thank you so much. And that leads me into my next provocation, which comes directly off of what you said. There's no doubt, you talked about people taking pictures and videos of you, right? So there's no doubt that social media has changed the way that we perceive the festival. There's also no doubt that conspicuous consumption has come to define the festival in the eyes of most of its participants, with personal joy being commodified and used to sell us to us, right? And further to that, almost every financial institution in the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago has a carnival loan product. Some offer 2-year loans, refinanceable after 1 year to keep consumers in a cycle of debt. Others will lend you up to $30,000 for, and I quote, Monday wear, makeup and hair, and after Carnival Tobago cool down. Having played Mass for the first time this year, is the cost of participation worth the price of admission?
Financially, yes. So that was also a thing for me. I don't want to spend all this money to play Mass. I find it was too much money. But having played Mass, I could see where the money that you spent would have gone into. We have a little tribe cup, we get a little backpack, we get, you know. So the money in that regard is worth it. But then it fell short in the actual experience and the actual connection. I thought I would have felt more of a connection with people, not just in the band, but just people in general out there for Carnival. And I didn't feel that. Jokingly, but at the same time, seriously, I was on the road for 2 days, Monday and Tuesday, and I wine on 2 women. Only 2. Only 2. Always no money. And I'm bringing the social media aspect into this now. The reason why I only wine on 2 women, there were other women in the band, and I was prepared to, you know, go in for a little wine or whatever. And 95% of them, their phone is here and it's selfie and it's video and it's this and that. And there's no time for enjoying the carnival. I don't want to call no band name, it doesn't matter which band. I've heard similar sentiments from other bands the same way. And maybe I was just a real unlucky participant, but you know, so the connection wasn't there for me. It felt like physical things that I would have received was with the money, but the experience and the carnival, it wasn't what I anticipated it would have been. And being in there made me realize that. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Harmony, you want to jump in on this one?
I do. Kian afterwards I asked you what band played in. I know what band Kim played in because she has her cup and I have my cup as well. But something that always comes up in this discussion, I want to know what are we looking at as Carnival? Because when we start to talk about the price to participate, we always focus on the top 5 bands, the big bands that you see on social media, but there are spaces in Carnival. I'd love to say that there's a place in Carnival for everybody. It may not be with the big band. You may play with a band that nobody has heard of, that you don't see on social media. They don't have an Instagram page. They don't have a social media presence. And that might be the place for you. There might be no place in mass for you. But I think that when we focus the conversation only on the big bands, it sort of makes it seem as though that is all there is to mass, when in truth and in fact, there are multiple spaces. Everybody here could decide we start in our own small band. We get a speaker, we get a truck, we go out on the road, and that's a band there. And that doesn't become a part of the conversation. We kind of speak as though we are forced to participate with these 5, as though there's no other choice or no other aspect, when, you know, as Kim mentioned, it is free. There's freedom to participate. Of course, with everything, there are barriers to participation, but you know, your experience is subjective and based on numerous things, of course, Keon, but I don't want us to approach the topic as though the experience in these, and we all know the names, I'd rather drop the names of the bands we're talking about, as though this is the be all and end all of what has become mass. On the topic of conspicuous consumption, I could definitely see that changing so many aspects of the experience and of the imagery that we see of Carnival. And it concerns me in particular when we have, you know, we can't not talk about AI. And it responds, the algorithms respond to what images are fed to it about a particular thing. So if the images that pervade our digital space are all a certain angle of the bam bam, then the AI starts to believe that that is what Carnival is. If we ask it to feed us back something, it regurgitates what it is fed. So if our focus is always on, yes, being critical of it, but always on perhaps what is most pervasive in the media and, you know, easy to pick on, I kind of want to challenge us to think about it on a broader spectrum.
Okay, I think that there's no doubt that everyone here agrees that there is a carnival that everyone can participate in. But we are talking, I suppose, specifically about what has become the carnival industry. The fact that financial institutions are willing to lend tens of thousands of dollars for a celebration that can be done for free, as you so rightly say, means that we are constructing a carnival that is about the 5 big bands, right? We are constructing a perception. I was listening to one of Wendell's interviews in preparation for this, and Wendell makes the point that there is an ignorance in our population about the fact that the road is made to walk on Carnival Day, and there is literally no price of admission, but we are fooled into believing that we have to pay this price of admission, right? So if we take that as a given, why would I want, me as a consumer, why would I want to go against the grain and play a mass that nobody sees on Instagram, or play a mass that is made by me? What's the return for me?
Well, I guess it begins with your point of entry. As Kim says, we all have POV or perspectives on this thing. And I totally agree. It depends on what carnival you're talking about, because it ain't one carnival. It had the Mardi Gras, it had the Camboulet, it had the brown people and the red people thing. It is very stratified. It's very segmented. And it's very, listen, we can't pretend it's right there in front of our faces. It's been there for the longest while. You know, there's a specific focus and attention. So it's all I'm going to say is a place where everybody can find a space. That's a nice little pet thing. I constantly encourage people. I say, you don't need to make a mission. But there are some people that could actually take that on board and say, I'm going to do something. Or, as you say, I'm going to choose to play in this band, even though it's not one of the popular bands. Most time people are settling for because they can't access one of these bands. And I was intrigued to hear you say that you're quite pleased with the trinkets, but the thing itself was lacking. So for me, the focus has always been the thing itself, because I come from a time when the thing was all it was. I was telling my trainer, who is a very contemporary mass player, and she's full of beans and full of energy, and she loves carnival. She loves to play mass. And we were talking about stopping for lunch, and I said, well, there was no such concept of stopping for lunch, right? What was the concept? It didn't enter our mind. It wasn't a thought that we entertained, right? So nobody could complain that the service was bad. They have to comment on what was being offered as their portrayal, and if they could connect to the portrayal, and it was well made, and if they could represent themselves on the scene and whatnot. But these days, because I happen to be the beneficiary of one of these costumes every single year, I've never played, I get a cup, and I get all kinds of trinkets, and then people around me ride the place, so there's line up for the costume, and this one have the bag, and this one have the goodies. You see all the goodies? Well, the first time I opened one of those bags, when I saw the menu of what you could eat and what you could drink, and all the various things you could do, apart from playing mass or jumping up or playing carnival, as they call it, which is a whole other phenomenon, as opposed to playing mass, right? It struck me that these people were in the business of moving product. The real business was the quantum of scotch and wine and sushi and Lord knows that you can move with your compendium of fets and with your congregational bands. And the first time I visited one of these bands on the road, I was agog. I was aghast. I was flabbergasted. Gobsmacked. 20 trucks. You know what this footprint of 20 trucks is? 20 trucks. And nowadays, had 3 trucks, 4 trucks, and 3,000 people playing mass. So I don't want to sound like I would imagine, but when you look at the carnival, as Mitchell said, the carnival is a mirror, right? I watched it a long time. I watched it hard. I've come to learn a lot about it. I came to it with many assumptions, and I think a lot of us come to it with equal assumptions. But it was sort of throw away a lot of those assumptions because the thing's throwing you right in your face. It's right there in front of your face. Access is limited. Yeah? Grandiosity is here every day. My alma mater put on a fet and they had a set. And when I saw the set, I am in this business. When I saw that set, I said, but that's $1 million spent.
Is that the set that was on the ground?
Yes. Yes, we school and one ground. And then the following week, it had a great ride for those who could to the fet. Because a lot of the boys who went to the school can't afford to go to the fet. So when I see and observe all these things, I just start to get a little fretful now. So when these opportunities present themselves, I can't help but say, listen, let me get over this all we as one, and everybody have a place and all that. Yes, that is true. The reality of today, staring us right in our face, is whether by accident or design, whether unwittingly or wittingly, the carnival imagination has been hijacked, kidnapped, and abducted by a bunch of market pretenders and bloody butt suckers in the guise of empresarios, promoters, and entrepreneurs. And guess what? I'm one of them. I'm a promoter. I try to connect to the thing and represent the thing. I'm not saying everybody has to do it my way, right? Everybody have to connect. If you love mass, understand what comes before you. You understand? See the years of chatter. When you go to like me, just say, yeah, but I see that already. You understand? If you love time, like Geralde, she's a piano. And that's the next thing too. If you're involved in a stream of the carnival, you're involved in that stream of the carnival. It demands that of you. It demands all of you. Carnival is not no play thing. It could mash you up. You understand? And right now, I think a lot of people playing with carnival and mashing it up. That is my point right now.
Okay. Kim, anything you want to add?
So I will start by saying that I agree with many of the perspectives shared by the panel. I feel like I should open up I wish Ruth would open up and I could go into it. based on what I'm going to say now. I, as Douglas would have mentioned, have worked and been lead consultant to many entities within the carnival industry. I myself have managed and been the lead and head of brand and marketing communications for one of the very bands that we are discussing today, right? And what I want to say is that the carnival that we see today is a reflection of society, whether we like it or not. And the people that are served by, let's say, these particular bands want a particular thing. As I said, Wendell, any entrepreneur looking at the landscape will say, where is there something that is absent that I can capitalize on, right? That is only natural. It is, we all have to make money. It is expensive life. So, not taken away from anything in terms of the traditions and where we came from and all of that. We know that we all are living in a capitalist sort of world and setting. So, being a reflection of what the people want, should we then, or should these bands then give something completely different? What is the answer there? For me, the band that I would have worked for, I'm not going to call any names here, don't come and ask me after either. For the band that I would have worked with in our first day, we promoted what you would have spoken about, but we say we ain't stopping, pumping. We don't have no lunch stop, or let just come. And by the second year, we had to have a lunch stop. Because the masqueraders said, yo, we loved it, but no, we need a lunch stop. So I'm saying all of that to say that it is a reflection of what we are seeing in society of demand and supply. And is it right or is it wrong to supply what is being demanded?
Anything more you want to add? I agree with what you're saying, because it's like between a rock and a hard place. We know what we want as a people, but then we also have so many demands that people have. They are in a place that they have to supply the demand. And so I think all of us here saying is not that we're saying that everything is completely wrong. It's just, I guess, to have that holistic view as to what it can be, and we just have to find ways, as you were saying, Kim, to ensure that it's not taken away from the people. The access is not taken away from the people who aren't afforded the access based on the direction that it's going. I guess to find whatever opportunities or spaces we can, create for them as well. And at the same time, we shouldn't have to create opportunities or spaces for them. It's just supposed to be there. Yeah.
I want to agree with that. Is that it's not about some agency trying to create opportunities, because that's false flag in the thing. It's re-empowering communities. It's reinvigorating the imagination. It used to come from the people in certain quarters, and they're giving us the main elements of the carnival. So the irony for me is that the people giving us the main elements of the carnival, the pan, calypso, and the massively traditional mass portrayals, they, to a great extent, are no longer, they're on the fringes of the carnival. So it behooves us all to recognize this and say, what can we do to address this without sort of some kind of artificial insemination, ideas. One of the things that I commend is like, look at the communities that are still vibrant with traditional forms like Paramin. We need to go and find out women in Paramin, with the Alfreds in Caribbean China, with Sharice and them in Belmont now, because Belmont is another one of them principles I probably say. I come from Belmont. I've done everything, the things surround me. And it's only in hindsight after you go through all the self-contempt and you feel everything outside better than here. And you come, like Marshall said, out of body back to yourself. And you see the gifts just like you. You want to share these gifts with the world. And guess what? We've done that. Our carnival is the most replicated carnival in the world. But Trinidad Carnival, we don't do for tourists. Trinidad Carnival is our carnival. Tourists are welcome. But by the time we start tailoring it to tourists, we start messing with it. And I think that's another thing that's starting to happen as well.
All right, so we're going to take it up a notch. I want to make a very clear distinction between carnival celebration and carnival festival. Okay? In this time, where, and this is, I think, the most brilliant quote I've heard for the day around carnival, where the descendants of the midnight robber are carrying the ropes and pushing the carts. Is there still space in the carnival celebration for the carnival festival?
I was able to ask someone from the is not place to claim your space and make a statement. That's why I say for me is about empowerment and feeling sufficiently empowered to claim that space. We did it during the February 30 years ago. We didn't think it would have lasted 3 years, much less 30 years. We claimed the space, we made our statement, our space was cleared for us. And in claiming the space, we had to then say, wait, no, is this we messing with, boy? The real energy is here because after blue, we paid the devil, hospital, gun in face, all kind of thing, right? Next year after that, this was our whole drama. I said, like, you know what? We need to understand what we're dealing with here. So that festival that you're talking about now, the energies we're talking about, people who does notify the flesh for weeks in advance of playing a mass, as opposed to jumping up for 2 days, right? That transaction is what we're looking at. Where is that going? Where goes the mass, I say? That comes from the same place where that quote comes from. Where goes the mass? So it really is observing and saying, how could we wrap this thing up in some tender loving care and see how if we can resuscitate it and give it a space, because it's not the providers of this new experience felt that the people who holding it up and serving drinks have abandoned the ideas and ideals of their grandfather. We are trying to connect to them. One of those guys came to us this year and looked at us as a production assistant. He said, you can then pick up a drink and have an epiphany and say, what is this? It had to be more than this. And I said, like that, come. Let me rejuvenate. And he was one of the fellows that helped make it happen, you know. And so I look for opportunities like that. One by one, sure, could make a difference. But I think societally, it needs to be in the mix somewhere and considered.
I just want to speak a little bit on what you said there, Wendell, in terms of we need to create this space for it. And I was going to say this at the end in my closing statement, but I think I'm going to say it now. Because as you guys would have heard, I would have stated that carnival for me is freedom, and you can't restrict something. Nobody can own something that is free, right? However, I've also said that carnival is owned by us, the people, we the people. But who is responsible for serving the people? I think that, as Wendell said as well, we cannot blame or you know, to ridicule those who have seen an opportunity and have taken it. We can't do that. But we also have to demand that those who serve the people who own this carnival do what is necessary so that these traditions don't die. And that's, I feel I finished here for the evening.
Yeah, I fully agree. As Wendell put it, we have to find ways to make sure that those who are on the fringes and left on the fringes and that they still we recognize the importance of what is there. Like when you started with talking about old mass and whatnot. Me being Marabella, born and bred, to this day, even Carnival for me is not Carnival without going. I head to Marabella every Monday night to see Monday night mass because I just connect with the people and we talk. There's so much being said, all the social commentary, political commentary is seeing the old mass, and it's a time to interact with what is going on in our country. And yes, we make it light of it, but at the same time, it's important issues being addressed and discussed amongst the society in the old mass. And like, that's the most amazing thing for me. And growing up, I used to always wonder why people not, I always say like I'm an old man from since I'm small, because I used to wonder why people not here in the old mass, why people not being a part of this. And I think that's one of the things that being left on the fringes, where I heard some years I might hear we do have Monday night mass in Marble, and it's hurt me, it's hurt me, like why? This is an important part of Carnival, you know? I need to talk about pan before the pan people both me and say, oh, use a big pan is on here out here not doing nothing as a arranger. Pan for me has led me with my opening statement to say that that part of Carnival is still with the people. Yeah, because I feel like as much as it would have been co-opted like for semi-finals in the grandstand, the Savannah, and for finals where, you know, people could pay to go in, there's still the opportunity to be with Pan on the road no matter what. You don't have to have money to be with Pan for Panorama. We have Panorama judging in the Pan yard for preliminaries, so anybody can come and go to any Pan yard. You don't have to pay to be there, and there are people just, all you know by Renegades is block off. We can't pass, that's the people coming and we there. We don't have to pay, we go, we be part of the Pan. Even when it's semi-finals, yes, if you want to go in the stands, you pay, but most people outside on a drag, moving around, listening to every band, and that's a part that we could just be there. It's free, it's for us to enjoy that part of it. But finals is the same thing. Yes, people may pay who would like to be in a more controlled environment, and at the same time, they might still very well be outside first and then going after. For on the road, there are bands that come out with a Juve band, you know, if it's All Stars or etc. So and there's Pan on the road, and people know if you want, you could buy your costume to trip with them, but you also don't have to. You could just be with the band on the road, you're with the steel band, chipping and going. And as I say, that for me is where the people still own Carnival there. That is, you know, for us. So yeah, it's for us to make sure that we don't want to use the word glorify, but show the significance of that aspect of Carnival as to what it should be. I don't like Carnival was owned by the slave masters, it gone to the people, but now it feel like if we're going back to, you know, own it that kind of way. Yeah, I like that aspect. So I talk from a pan people, you know, they don't, yeah, the pan we still there with the people.
I kind of want to challenge something here. When we are saying that we, of course, we don't know who we is, but when we say that we need to empower these communities, or we need to make a space. I know we're not saying that it's about a band adopting a community and we pick up and say, yeah, let me give them something to do, give them money to do it, or whatever the case is. But Keon, as I'm hearing you, and even from your opening statement, you know, I'm not disagreeing that Pan it belongs to the people. But I am wondering about the economic aspect of Pan, that all of these plans have to be supported by a corporation. So is it that is the model we're thinking of when we're talking about communities and empowering them to create their own spaces? Is not open up the band to the top 5 bands. Well, it may be that, and you know, I'm open to hearing about that as well. But I think the power structure and the economic structure is something that we can't ignore. So I'm wondering, all right, when we say we have to do something, it have to have money behind it. So who is the we and where the money coming from, and who is it going to? Because me as a band leader, well, I'm not actually a band leader, but if I were, is it that now part of my corporate responsibility is to have a certain section of the band that, you know, we started talking about diversity and inclusion. Who's the we and whose priorities are we trying to shift here is what I'm trying to understand.
And you took the words right out of my mouth, and just very quickly, everything that you spoke about in terms of the, I think you said Renegades or whoever it is, that whoever is on the road, there's a cost to that. Who is paying that cost? Who is the we that is paying the cost for the people on the fringes to be able to participate?
Well, we used to be the people, we used to be the community that supported the band, and then the band also found that model and perfected it of getting a sponsor without losing their soul. So it is a model for many to emulate, but it's been existing for a long time. I totally agree with you, and I saw this full panorama this year. I was moved at the energy. They nearly knock over the minister when they announce the prize. You know, the band itself is still very strong in terms of people's direct connection to the band. But you point out that on the Sunday, the stands was bought out by corporate interest. So we can't deny that well, this is happening, that is happening. Both things can be true, and we can look at all of it and decide, you know, what it means to us. I totally agree with you. Who is the we that is to help make this space for these new initiatives to happen? Well, the we is we, because I always tell people, you know, the carnival, maybe the NCC may be tasked with managing carnival and putting up the stands and taking down the stands, but they don't control it. They have no control over it. You know, they can only control the events that they put on. We are the ones that make carnival. We take the risk every year and make a jewelry band. We take the risk every year and make a bunch of songs that they play on the radio. We take the risk every year and make a show. And most times it pays off because we develop an audience over the year. So it up to the people need to regain and reassert that sense of independence. And when we traveled to London and in the first place to do the Notting Hill Carnival, they're meeting all the band leaders and there'll be big grouses about grant funding. I was like, oh, well, you're lucky. Me, I'm not saying no such thing. We are no grant funding, you know. So, but yesterday we have this carnival that continues to spawn all these carnivals. So on a certain level, I think we overemphasize the idea of who paying for the cost of it. We used to pay for it. You know, I think everything has become so grand now that, well, a lot of us can't afford to pay for it. So those who can afford to take a loan, like there was a symposium the other day discussing the economics of carnival, and most of the conversation was couched at people coming to carnival. And one young lady got up at the end and said, well, excuse me, I live here, I have a nice job, I work in the bank, and I would like to play mass, but I can't afford it, and I would like to go fets, but if I don't know somebody on the committee, I can't get in. And then the response from the moderator was, sorry, we're out of time. And it was the one pertinent question that had to do with us here on the ground. How do I get access to these things, or how do I get the sense of, like you talk about a loan, I wonder if I could go like Sharice and them and say, I want to play a bat. Could I get a loan? No, I didn't give me a loan to play a bat. So how do you value these things? Because when it's time to cut out how wonderful our carnival is, we depend on these things to come to the fore. And we emphasize the thing that gets all the emphasis while the festival is happening. You know, so really a lot of it has to do with a media perspective and a bias, an inherent bias. Over the years, we just consider this manifestation of the carnival as the carnival. But meantime, Marbella have carnival, Calbichama carnival, Palmina carnival, and all in between the big mass that have awareness. Unfortunately, guys, let me TV must take a break. I don't just get go for the ads. Well, then we'll say, look, we can put the monsters and then the lines on the road, you know, in between the big mass.
I'm getting segue after segue after segue, and I have a question from our remote viewing audience. And I'm going to paraphrase the question because it came almost as a comment, so I've had to make it a question. If I play non-traditional mass outside of the city of Port of Spain, have I played mass?
Yes.
In the carnival imaginary, as carnival has been structured, I should say, right? Do we see TTT cameras, TV6 cameras in Carpetcheimer and Gasparilla?
People do it.
Right. So my question is, right? Consumed with sharing information, sharing images, and so on. If I play Pretty Master, no one sees it because I played in San Fernando, Gasparilla. All right. In the new imaginary of what our carnival is becoming, have I played mass?
I teach children, a little bit children. We have a show coming up May 18th and 19th, so yes. It's called Time Longer Than Time. You know, and there was a phrase that they said to me the other day, and if there are no pics, it didn't happen. I was like, what? And it's like, if there are no pics, it didn't happen. So unfortunately, that's the time we live in, right? I say Carnival is a contemporary thing. So if you're now and you're happening, why are you looking to play in a thing that's not happening? I want to be in the happening thing. If I was young, I looking to play in Lost Tribe or something so, right? That's where the arty people just play mass. Now, but I old now, we ain't playing in that. And all people around me just play there because that's where they feel they get a chance to express themselves. And, you know, I'm glad they have a space to express themselves in that regard. But if there's no books happen, they don't have harmony, you know?
Oh, so many thoughts are going through my head now. Because something that I have challenged is being somebody who is on the committees and concentrated, and you know, the advertising is all in your face, it's on the radio, you know, all the facts are coming up there on the calendar from August the year before. And wanting to explore and experience from a sort of culture perspective, the more traditionally smaller, the ones on the fringes, it bugs me that I can't find out about them if I'm not involved. But then as we're having this conversation, I'm trying to kind of weigh my perspective to find out if it needs to be consumed, if it needs to be on cameras, if it needs to be included in the big five, or it can just exist as a niche on its own, or if it wants to be recognized. I mean, we assume that everybody wants to be seen. Keon is saying that from inside the ropes and being looked at as a spectacle rather than interacting and engaging with people on the outside of the ropes. He was uncomfortable with that feeling. So I'm wondering, how much do we impose our need to commodify and portray and mediaify the aspects of the carnival need to be imposed on these spaces in Gasparilla and Marabella and Couva, in as much as, well, you know, so it's an incomplete thought, but it's the thought that came up there.
It's a very fine line. I agree with you in that regard. You know, sometimes you point the camera at the thing and everybody flock to the thing and they spoil the thing. So in many regards, you know, it's good that we get to hear, and if you want to make the effort. But that thing it's about how much validation do you need? You understand? And that's what amazes me about our traditional mass players year after year. Most of them are missed. You don't know who they are, right? And that commitment to playing the mass and being masked and maintaining that masquerade tradition that is part of the festival tradition, kudos to them. None of them should get a grant. They shouldn't have to compete for a prize because they're doing real work to make sure that these things still have a little lifeblood in them. And we saw that Damlarone, coaching Damlarone with the top, that's askew and that is mass. That is innovation. That is imagination. Taking a traditional form and applying a contemporary sunset, the song that they play, go down in the center. You know, you can't get more contemporary than that. I don't know how they judge her, you know, because that's where all they fall down, right? Because they will say, oh, that's not a true Damlarone, but that was the truest Damlarone I saw for the Carnival. So I applaud those people who are taking those initiatives. But back to the question, it really depends on how much validation you need to say that I played mass and I had a time.
Okay. I have another question from our remote audience. And I'm going to read the question as it was said. I think the term carnival of people is wide-ranging. While it may suggest a more grassroots idea of what the people have given to carnival, is it that carnival does not cater to or include other people?
It still is for everybody. It does include everybody. I just think it's the overall portrayal. But when they took the words out of my mouth, is a narrow line that we have to toe, because if we try to bring something too much to the forefront, it could spoil the thing. It really could. Start thinking about it. There is a niche for everybody still. But at the same time, we do feel, of course, in terms of media, too much is being portrayed in one direction. I think we just need to toe that line to ensure And I think that's the brilliance of this panel. Having this discussion, we could hopefully find some answers to these things that have obviously been troubling all of us. You know, that we could find some ways to ensure that the other parts of the carnival, the people that aren't represented on a big stage, that we still acknowledge and know that they are there, and we don't allow those small niches, you know, not necessarily small, but those unseen niches don't fade away on us, and that we take them for granted and they no longer exist. Yeah, and I like that you said, Wendell, that is how much validation you need. Shout out to the King Kong crew in Marbella, growing up, my uncle and them, the gorillas, as a little child, and we striving to be gorillas. They used to make little gorilla suits for us as little children, and they're still there. You'll be here in Oleard for a thing, and everybody's face is covered. And sometimes some more people in Marbella play this. I'm boy, I see it, and I didn't even know it's them, you know, because they're in the gorilla suits. But year after year, they're coming out and they don't need that validation, because that's one of the rare grounds people mass. So we definitely have space and places for everybody. You know, it's just nice for us to make sure that in national conversation in spaces like these, we pay homage to these people that still, you know, holding up that masquerade element of the carnival.
I have a question also from our remote audience, and the question reminds us that marginality does not have the power to other and exclude. Establishment, power, and pervading hegemony does. So it brings us right back to the question: who owns carnival in the imagination of the people? Let's forget about the reality. Who owns this carnival? Because we are talking about exclusion. We are talking about having to settle, to have, you know, people don't, I'm not saying people don't necessarily want to play mass in Marabella, but we've got to the point where I had to play mass in Marabella because that's my pocket. All right? Because we knew that there are people who are getting up at 4 o'clock on Carnival Monday morning to leave Marabella and park their car in town and spend 2 days in town. All right? So who owns Carnival? We're right back where we started. In the imaginary of the people who want to participate. Who owns it?
Shadow speaks of the controllers, so-called controllers, carnival controllers. The people from era to era, chapter to time, they believe that they control a certain aspect or element of the carnival. And certainly in this rounds, as far as playing mass goes, there's a conglomerate that has at least 5 or 6 or 7. I don't even know how many bands they own. They exert an inordinate amount of pressure on the carnival ecosystem simply because of the amount of plant and machinery that are required to run. So, for instance, I'll give you an example. Our jury band is always dependent on Monday or Tuesday to take a little extra, right? In recent time, that's become very difficult because a lot of fellows will tell you that they're locked down. They paid not to play in Juve. They paid so that they're sure to have their truck. And the prices that are now being quoted to you because of the competition and because of that lockdown is phenomenal. So that's only has a direct impact. One of the things I heard over Carnival is that you couldn't just go and buy coconut water in the grocery anymore because all your inclusive events required the coconut water. So I mean, that's a simple little example of how the whole space is impacted by one sector, right? So you can't deny, maybe in the imagination of many, well, yes, there are certain people who control all these bands and all these brands, and they loom large in people's imagination, whether via social media or the media. So the perception is, well, them only think. One that I challenge constantly, but that's me. You know, but in most people's minds, I could imagine it would be fair to assume that one could look at the thing and say, well, yeah, these people own the thing. But I say, but nobody can't own the thing. They might control it for a while, but they can't own it.
So we're going to take the opportunity, let the panel catch their breath, collect their thoughts, and we're going to get a microphone into the audience and open the panel and the floor to some audience questions and comments.
Hi everyone. I'm not in the carnival industry in a formal way. I just like mass. But over the past couple of years, I've been observing what carnival has become. Well, I'm a lawyer now, and I would say from the perspective of law, I have this perspective where people don't really know what they want unless you show them what they want. So when you're drafting law, do you draft law for what is society as it is, or do you draft law for the best version of society because you have the knowledge to say, this is what we really need. You might not know now, but 10 years from now, you know you needed this law. Similarly, when you know what carnival is, because I've always liked carnival since I was a child, I played mass, thanks to my mommy, and I'm growing up in the mass. I did a little theater art, so I know what the traditional mass characters are. I played pan in school, so I have a love for pan. And I take it as my personal job to tell my friends that have pan crawlers on Wednesday night. Let us go. Stick fighting is on Thursday. Then we go after work, get some drinks, and then we go down. They go Martin for pan. And I've been trying to go stick fighting in Arima, and I'm trying to go all over as I get older and whatnot. And I think there's a responsibility by the mass makers to show people what it is carnival should be. And to draw it back to the question of who owns carnival. Carnival, I could say, is split into two parts for me. What it actually is, the essence, the vibe, that feeling that you get. Because I would say the first time I play mass, different from the last time I play mass. The first time was euphoric. I was like, oh my God, this boy will always be doing this every year for boy. Wow. And the last time I played mass, it was like we're taking real pictures. And I'm conscious that somebody videotaping behind there. And the essence wasn't there. That essence is owned by the people. The mass that is today, I would say, is commodified. It's capitalism. It is a business because it costs money to put on mass. But I think the further the two owners or the two people who put on mass get away from each other, the worse it's going to get. Less people are going to want to affect when that essence not there. When you're just going because it's $1,500 for the fete and your belly will be full, but you're enjoying yourself, the vibe not there. Lots of people saying the vibe's not there. And I think, tying it back to the beginning, there's a responsibility. If you really like mass and you're putting it on, and it's not just a business for you, there's a responsibility there to create the mass that people should want, to show them, well, you know what a bat is? A lot of people don't know what a bat is, at least from my generation. We went to the Carnival Museum, and a lot of them never see somebody baby dolls and all of these, and it's like, well, how you don't know what that is? It's because people are not putting it, it's not the commodified version of mass, and there's a responsibility, I think, there for mass makers to create that, even to call up a name, Lost Tribe, the traditional mass, which I'm glad there's tradition, but where is the mass inspired by the traditional? It's a lot of clothes and it's pretty and it's tight, but where's we going back to the roots there? So I think, well, the question, right? But I think is who has that responsibility, and is it the government? Is it the mass makers? Is it we that has the responsibility to create the mass for the people? And then I'm not talking law. The other side of it is the law side of it. Competition law says that you can't have a monopoly and abuse it. Who gonna bring the competition claim against the people who have the monopoly? And is there abuse? Right? But there reaches a point where a monopoly does become abuse, where you can't get a truck because they paid for by somebody else, or you are locked into a contract that means that you can't, compete, the non-compete clause. But is the contract fair? Can you live off the payment from that contract? But the price is going up each year, and the people who put in on the mass who making the costumes, they're living at the same salary, or the salary not sufficient. So whose responsibility is it to make sure this is fair? Where's the question there? I don't know. If you can find that, that'd be great.
I think it's like when people like yourself ask the question, right? Because I shudder to say the government ought not to assume any kind of thing to do with the creative part of it, right? There's enough that they put up the thing and take down the thing and is enough. My good friend with the has always said that we need something like an arts council. You know, there's supposed to be some kind of cultural policy. And I see one industry representative still nodding. Maybe within the context of that cultural policy, we say that these forms are important to us and ought to be protected and respected and incentivized. I maintain we need to incentivize these things to a degree, right? Without division, even discipline, as I like to say. You use good words, essence. I like to say spirit. As I used to hear plenty in Carnival, the spirit of Carnival. Where's the spirit? And where's the spirit? Where the spirit come from? It comes from all the way. It comes from the people, right? It have many carnivals. You play mass. I always say you play mass with your tribe. You play mass with your people, right? So if you say, well, there's 9 people and there's who you play mass with, that's who you're playing mass with. The whole thing that we're dealing with now, we're dealing with an entity that understands the psychological fault lines of the society that we are part of and understand that aspiration and access are valuable commodities that people will be prepared to pay whatever for. And that's what we're dealing with.
Any other questions from the audience? Yes.
Yes, good day. Thank you very much for your time and an effort of being here and sharing such knowledge. My name is Nathan. I'm an exchange student from Curacao. And I've been this semester exploring different parts of the Carnival of Trinidad. I've been trying to do some readings to find out the origins because it's a question mark in my head. But when we talk specifically about the people and the people doing things and the people wanting to do certain things, I think it comes then to the point of what influences the people's ideas of what they can or cannot do. And I think in the beginning, it was Harmony, right? Somebody in the beginning, Harmony talked about AI and what you feed the AI and what you get out of it. And I think you cannot deny that social media feeds people what they want to do. So if people are seeing this is what is Carnival, this is what should be, and especially young people, then they're gonna go to those specific things because that is what they see. So then the question for me becomes then, how do you let the people know that there are other options? How do you give that information to them so they know that, I can go and register at the National Carnival Commission to do whatever I will do, whatever costume I want and walk. There's nothing stopping me to do that. How do people get access to that? And then the question then for me becomes then, who gives people the perspectives of what Carnival is, right? And I think, for instance, thinking about tourism, thinking about what's on the videos, those perspectives influence people's way of thinking. So if someone is reading a newspaper, if they're reading something and the only thing they see is Carnival is this particular thing, there was this particular shows, it conditions people to believe that this is all that exists, right? And so that becomes then my question, then how do you change the people's minds that there is more, and you empower them, like Wanda was saying, to go there and do their own thing and make the actions that they take their own.
This, a disclaimer, this does not answer your question. It probably asks another question. I do that a lot, based on your question. But a few things I'm thinking about here, as we discussed the carnival being a mirror. So it is a reflection of, and Kim mentioned it, Wendell mentioned it, a reflection of the demand, supplying the demand. And as the previous, sorry, I don't know your name, the previous person who asked the question as well, is kind of probing whether we introduce people to alternatives. How do we show them, as she said, what it should be? But, and again, I'm going back to whose responsibility it is, because if this society is showing us that this is what people want, they want a lunch stop. The sun out here different. It's not the same sun that was out here 30 years ago. But we want the people to also understand that you don't necessarily have to go with the band that needs to have a lunch stop. We could go with the band with a one truck, with a two truck. But at the same time, that in and of itself, as a business person, I'm thinking as a business person, as somebody in marketing, and I've seen this conversation happen behind the scenes of somebody who is trying to do something different with an event. And in turn, people will say, well, you just going along with the regular thing. Is 10 artists running out on stage, and that's all people want to know, who performing. They don't want to know about the music. They want to know, okay, who's on the lineup. And then you take this risk on to say, I'm going to show the people something else. And the people don't show up because most of the people want to go where the 10 artists are. So I think it's all fair and fine and well to say, yeah, we need to do this. We need to question. We need to hold people accountable. We need to change the guard or whatever the case is. But and I always think, you know, as Kim said, there's money that needs to be fed into all of these things to make them happen. So changing that guard is a risk, and who is willing to take that risk on? Who is willing to take a $100,000 loss on an event because you were trying to show the people that this is what quote unquote it should be or what it could be? Yeah, so that's a perspective I'd want to include in that. Yeah, of course, ideally, you know, if we all could, we would. But who is taking on the financial risk of, because it has to be a business at the end of the day. Whether or not it's a profitable business or needs to be a profitable business is a separate question. But who is willing to take on the risk? Because I can't say that I am, you know, to show people that there are alternatives.
I am. The brings what it is. Cherie says, you know, there are people out there who are prepared to take the risk because that's what it requires. And there are people who are prepared to not give in to the sameness and trust that there's an audience that doesn't want the same 12 artists or 10 artists running in. And it's a risk. And as I said, it is primarily in the domain of private enterprise. And every year, the people in that private and in that zone are the ones that take the risk and stand the bounce. But guess what? It could pay off. When you have a good season, you give thanks. And you didn't have to compromise yourself to do it or whatever. It's possible. I mean, we don't start off with the intent of making money. I think that's what I say. It starts with what the intent. If your intent is to make money, and there's a team audio, you're looking to make as much money as you could make. And why reinvent the wheel when everybody don't share what they want? Well, we could just up the ante, carve out a space and do that. But I'm saying that in doing so, we're playing a safe game and losing a lot of the other possibilities. And a lot of these things happen, but back to that sort of attention or focus on the AI, which is the whole thing that we have to deal with now, right? That's a very real thing, the AI. How do you understand the AI? How do you treat the AI sort of starts pushing more down the reins to compete with these skimpy girls? I don't know. I saw my hand raised.
Hi, folks. Good evening, everybody. Well, I mean, Wendell, you kind of answered the question I wanted to ask, but I also wanted it from the other perspective as well. So, Kim, the question I have to ask is, when you do take those risks, or if those companies are taking those risks, what is the decision that's being made if a loss is incurred? Is it we just have to follow the norm? We just have to commit to supplying the demand because this is exactly what the people are saying they want. And this is a business at the end of the day, so we have to make sure that we make money and it's all about profits and all these different things. What is the decision that's being made when we make a loss?
It may appear that the decisions that are made solely around profit. But the organization and bands that I have worked with, genuinely, I know that many people may not believe it, but genuinely do not put on Carnival and the mask that they do put on to exploit it, right? Every year we do surveys, post-Carnival surveys, right? To see, no, but trust me. Yes, they do. They do. The wider population isn't playing with the band. We have to focus on. It isn't. 100% it's not. But correct. So what I want to say is that we require in Trinidad and Tobago a balance right now. We need, I don't know who it is, if it is the ecosystem, according to Dr. Tull, that needs to come together and collaborate and sit down and say, what can we do? Because in terms of the question that was asked before yours, what you see on social media is what happens, let's say at a fete. You see whatever happens in a fete, 60 seconds, this is what the fete was about, right? But what if we also saw, including in the whining and the jamming and the drinking and so on, what if we also saw a Dame Lorraine whining her bumsy? What if we also saw Moko Jumbi walking through? And there are entities, fete promoters and so on, who try to incorporate these aspects of the mass into their events. However, again, it's a business for them, so it can't go overboard for them. You get what I'm saying? So I feel that incentives are required. For me, I believe Trinidad and Tobago is at a very perilous point in our mass. I'm talking specifically about mass. I believe that there needs to be collaboration between all of the entities involved. Everybody has to come together. It can't be about money and making money and that sort of thing. It has to be about preserving Trinidad and Tobago and preserving our status as the Mecca of Carnival. Because I believe we are slowly, and I don't even know if it's slowly anymore, losing that stance. And so collaboration needs to happen within the entire ecosystem to ensure that we don't lose that stance.
Okay, so my comment really is not a question. It's a comment, is that undergirding this whole discussion, which I didn't hear come out, only Wendell made a slight reference to it, is that this really is about identity. And that self-contempt that you talk about, and the parallel to that of cultural confidence. Now, that's not my term. That's a term coined by Peter Minshall. Having that cultural confidence to decide that you're inserting yourself into the thing. Because if we look at the history of Carnival and how Carnival has emerged and how the people came to be part of the Carnival, they had to insert themselves into the Carnival and then it became something else. But they did so because they had a certain kind of identity, or they felt that an identity that related to Carnival, that aligned with certain aspects of Carnival, was theirs. So the identity part of it, because all these people who chasing the big five, if you want to call it that, they're searching for an identity. And people will always present something for you to latch on to because they know you're searching for an identity. So it's what you determine you want to latch on to. People are not powerless to change their circumstances. You're not powerless to go and play in a particular band and feel the self-contempt. And if I'm playing in a band and I feel self-contempt, I will come out of that band because I need to satisfy myself. And if that band, but people want to relate to something, to find an identity, to say, I identify with that. This is me.
if it's the big five, the same way people identify with the gorilla bands and the traditional mask and the rubber, etc., etc. So you have, well, on the panel, you have a very good example of an alternative or people who are forging a different kind of identity, which might be more meaningful given our cultural and our colonial heritage, that they're seeking to do some decolonization rather than going to the capitalism that brought us to the state we at the moment, that you're moving away from that. So you have, you know, Wendell and they as an example. And if you want to know where the carnival started, the person from Curacao, talk to you know, the Cambule people, talk to Wendell and they about they should have gone to that concert they had in Queen's Hall over the carnival, where they highlighted the sailor. So every time you talk about carnival and who owns carnival, think about identity. And I think you'll find the answer in that.
I think it's me here. I think that's the answer, and we have been playing with it all evening. And it's just like we have all been saying, it's we, and it's just for us to, as you said, insert ourselves and just have that confidence and take it back, for want of a expression, but just to reinsert ourselves is everybody. It's we to just say, you know, this is what it is, and we losing this and we want to show it more. And you're very right in saying that. I wholeheartedly agree. And to the person from Curacao, I was just thinking, I just want to go back to when you were saying, you know, people who are not from here, what they are seeing and what they're being conditioned to what carnival is. I think we need to throw that back into the hands of not private but public entities, the governments or the tourist boards, etc. Maybe Kim, you could speak to this more. Just in our advertising, our tourist advertising, yeah, in the videos, because I thought about it when he was speaking. No, that's another discussion, but I thought about it in the videos that I do see that I come across on YouTube. And I really thought, did I ever see a King Kong crew or gorilla? And I really haven't seen any of that. And so I'm so glad that you said that. We need to, and so now that's the step of not making it a commodity, not you know, advertising it, but advertising it for the purpose of capitalizing on it or making it like a bandwagon, but still showing the world.
Shining a light on it.
Yeah, shedding that light on it.
Interesting you mentioned watching the videos, because after Carnival, I decided to watch YouTube to see what Carnival videos they were, and it was a lot of vlogs. I don't know if that's what it's called. These people talking about their Carnival experience. And overwhelmingly, it was people who bought a package, a curated package, a 5-day package. They flew in on a Wednesday and they flew out on the next Wednesday. And everything was lined up for them and curated. And some of them didn't make it past the ambush on the Saint-Laurent Juve. Some of them had to take because even at Trinidad, you can't sustain that. And these poor people, they don't know what they bought into. They don't know what they come into. And they all come, it's a blast, it's the biggest party, the wildest party in the world, and whatnot and whatnot. And that's their expectation. And that's what they, and is that what we are? No, that's not what we are. But there was one video that I saw, like 2 little girls, and they were like, they didn't have enough cushions in the lunch stop, and they couldn't get a blanket, and they never made it across the stage because one of them was dehydrated. So they want to recommend, because the foxes have to leave the stage, which I never knew before the drums about, right? Never knew that. She said they must have carts now with drinks and sweets so people can't keep up the heat. Because as we said, the sun different. I don't know, he was wearing all them in short clothes in them days and the sun was hot. So, I mean, people have different expectations. I realized that. The day when people started asking us about security in the Minshall ban, I was like, no, who is the security? It's plenty of weed. You know, people started asking about drinks. For the last 10 years, about 30 years of Jubilee, people come and ask about all inclusive. And it's just getting more and more and more and more. That's what they expect. And it comes a time when you say, you know what, I give up. I throw my hands in the air. I cannot say I give up, but people say we can't give up. And there's a part of me that says, well, who's you to say that? But then there's another part of me that says you're damn right, because when I looked at the Juve this year, it's the people, it's not us. The people who put out an idea and the people make it happen year after year. And that, no, but for me, coming through the school, I come through. These things resonate for me, right? And I know why I'm doing, or why we, it's not me alone, why we know why we're doing what we're doing. But I can't make that demand of somebody now. Is a different time. Yeah. So maybe if I was playing Arsenal, I would want to stop for lunch and hopefully get out a push on a blanket. So I would not to complain. It's not in the shambles, donkey taken. No, but clearly the society has changed. We have changed, our expectations have changed. And that mirror that is the carnival, when we're looking at, do we like what we see? Or if we look at it and we say, wait, nah, I like this part of it, but I ain't like that part of it. I remember when Fed was all drum and some plank on the stage and a tent and Tupac and you leave sweaty. I went to New York and came back a couple of years later and went to one of them feds and he's like, when is the party starting? He went tight and rolling on the ground and people taking pictures. And then when they get drunk enough, everybody had a time. So we had a different time now, I accept that. But also, there's a constant. There's an essence, there's something eternal. I use the word freedom. It was fought for. We fight for this. For freedom. It's a celebration of our freedom. So how can we use that in mix? So when I see in a Juve band now, make it make sense to me. It will make sense to me. So that's why part of me wants to give up. And then there's the next part of me that says, but if you give up, what many people say, if you give up, how are people going to know? Well, I don't intend to be a martyr for a cause. But by the same token, this festival, this ritual that we serve, and I use the word, and I will say, I could say these things now, 30 years later. There was a lot of ignorance at the beginning. All of us who want to be part of this thing, we have to challenge that ignorance within self. We have to challenge that, the assumptions we make. And then say, you see what I'm going to make? We never, ever registered our band in 30 years. Because we're not looking to be judged. How are you going to judge your band? We don't want the prize. So we realize we're abilities in that regard. I can't make that demand of this new generation of player. But for me, these are the things that come before. The money comes after you pay respect to these things. That's how I see it.
All right. So
I want to just
take
ask,
one.
I want to just ask
Sure.
something.
Sure.
I found that throughout the conversation and within the audience, Wendell, there's been a sort of discourse that the government is not responsible. And I want to ask if the government is in place to ensure the betterment of our country and to ensure the continuity and the prosperity of our country and the people. Guys, come on, come on. Isn't it then some of this, part of this, their responsibility? Or looking at it from another side, is it our responsibility to demand it of them?
Well, I have a question that pretty much asks the same thing. And the question is, should state funds continue to be used to underwrite private profit-making enterprises at Carnival? Should state funds be used? What is the government's role?
I will answer that, my personal, and I'll be the finisher here after that tonight, guys. If you are looking at the economic sense in terms of GDP and so on, we all know, we've all heard it, oil is going to run out. Where are we going from there? We need to start to invest in alternative industries. And if you're looking at it from that perspective, then yes, I think it should continue.
Okay. All right. So
what we could question or challenge is the mechanism by which it happens. Yeah. And that's why I'm saying, I'm very wary of more government interference. So maybe there needs to be government input in here, hold that. And we have people that come from the thing, if they're able to come together and we organize a guild or, as I say, a arts council or something that says these things are important. And, with some input from Dr. Burke and them, with all the research that they're doing up here in the UE. So this institution has a vital role to play in helping us understand this thing. Forests such as these are critical, and we can't shortchange the opportunity to grapple with big things in these moments, yeah? So hopefully these conversations, and I'm very heartened that they're a lovely audience here, but it's reaching a much wider audience and it's being recorded and it's there, and the young people who just, if it's not on YouTube, they don't know where to find anything. So we need to put it on YouTube so they can understand, hey. But yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's why I'm having this initiative and this effort. Things like this will help fill the gap and help us to come to an understanding of these things are important. We have to protect it. We have to preserve it. We have to invest in it.
You can take one more question. We are time. We can take one more question. There is a mic here. And after that, we're going to wrap up. We can take one more after that.
Okay, so I know you said you're finished, but this is a genuine question, being that you spoke a little earlier, we were hearing some commentary about, traditional mass being incorporated into this new age lead up to the carnival and the festivities and the fetes that are coming on. I've noticed that they've been used more of decoration, and the traditional mass community themselves aren't being engaged in this. It's usually these same big five designers who put on these costumes or make these costumes 2 days before, when we have endless traditional mass makers who have been making costumes year round, who don't even get that kind of opportunity. And as we were speaking about the economy and the economics involved in making these kinds of costumes, is money that's going into it. And the money that you get back from the government is very little. And we're talking about how we could preserve our culture and further it, but it's still this dilution. Is there some kind of way that private enterprises and the bigger promoters, etc., is there some way that they could, come together and engage these mass makers in some kind of way so that there is authenticity in this element of the festival?
Now, I cannot speak for the entire fraternity of pet promoters and so on. I'm not sure where that information that you have came from. The entities that I work for engage the very people that you are talking about, the people on the ground, the people who actually do it. Sorry. Yes, 100%. So let me not say 100%. Maybe about a 98, 99%. When it comes to things like stick fighting, like Jab Malasi, like devils, those sorts of things, right? I don't know if there's a specific, right?
The sailor midnight robbers, who aren't actual midnight robbers or sailors, they are mocking pretenders. At that point, they have no midnight robber speech. They don't know how to do a sailor dance, and they kind of just walk around these fetes like, hey, look, long time I see you, brethren, and they're out of character also. So it's not even that we're using actors, but it's just a placeholder. And it's sometimes, I've seen costumes that are in these fetes that are just wire and and it's like shared material, and you could see that it was constructed today for today, and it wasn't any kind of thought that really went into it. It was just like, oh well, people talking about this traditional mass thing, so let me incorporate that in it now. It might be a nice little spectacle, and we could say we do that.
Yeah.
As well as this is like a small part too. Is there a way that private Trinidad or traditional mass makers can engage with private Trinidad to be incorporated into it, because again, it's money that is spent on these costumes. And this year when we brought out our band, it was these small businesses that gave $100 here, $100 there, and it added up. But in the end, like, it still comes out that money was spent, we spent more money than we, but these same private Trinidad will spend millions behind the bigger bands. Is there a way for it to?
No, no, you have no economic value.
Unfortunately, that's why it has to come from elsewhere. I mean, you are not obliged to hire tambourines and mokojambis and whatnot, because most times it will be kind of cosmetic, wouldn't it? If it's not in keeping with the theme, it is a little party show. So I think we need to consider it differently in that regard. I think, you asked the question, who's taking the risk? We all have to be prepared. If we want the thing to change, we have to be prepared to take the risk. Because if we don't take the risk and we play the game as it is already defined, nothing changes. And in the first instance, part of taking a risk means there's the potential for loss. So it's also, you're not going to make a scene in 1 year or 2 years or 3 years. You have to invest in time. You have to invest yourself. And people will say, hey, look, there's something going on there I want to be a part of. Or maybe something that never can be monetized. I don't know if Monday Night Mass in Marabella is monetized, but it clearly has a value, because when you talk about it, I can see the thing manifest on you much more than the gift of the cup and your certificates, right? And for me, it's like, let's stay in Marabella. You have the experience. And you can say, right. You can always run back.
And as you're talking about the risk, I just want to make sure and mention, just in case people don't know, because I know when you would have said it, Harmony, you would have spoken about the sponsorship that steel bands get, but really and truly, for those of us in the band, they don't have sponsorship, and it's just like what you said. Is people in the band, they might work with a paint shop, and that paint shop say they will give us $500 and just to put their little banner or anything. I can probably count on my hands how many bands have sponsorship. Steel bands, I think that's a good place to start looking at taking that risk. No money, no profit, and we going out there, and it's a loss every year. But steel bands just they're for the thing. They're taking the risk. They just staying true to what they are without that money. Yeah.
All right. So we're 7 minutes before the schedule close. And to bring the panel to a close, I'm going to give you my last provocation. It's what we've been talking about for the whole afternoon, right? So there is a carnival imaginary and there's a carnival reality. The carnival imaginary has the festival as a site for rebellion, social commentary, tradition, and culture. The carnival reality is branding, visibility, and economic opportunity. How can we make the two coexist comfortably?
Well, yeah, comfortably is the key word there, because I'm hearing the direction and the conversation is taken, and we keep hearing the word loss. Somebody had a loss. And as Wendell said, not everybody, we can't force it upon anybody to want to take that loss. If I have $1,000 in my pocket at the end of the month and you're telling me that I need to take that $1,000 and put it behind something because I believe in it and I want it to be preserved, when I go to the grocery at the end of the month, what is that preservation doing for me? So we're speaking in ideas, and we're speaking about, we need to do this and we have to, and somebody has to do it. And we will clap and applaud and say, yeah, we will do it, and somebody has to. But the material basis there is, I think there's a question in the audience. The material basis there, the discomfort is what is coming out in this conversation, and I'm trying to, well, I am no economist. I work in marketing like Kim, but it's towing that line between, why does it have to be a loss? We know that it doesn't have to be a loss, but it seems as though that is the running theme, and that is where we're leaning towards. If you want to make it work, you had to be willing to lose. So my question to the question, I'm doing that all the time, is then how do we angle these industries so that you don't need to be the martyr to make it work? And that's how we comfortably combine the two. And again, it will go down to wherever the resources are concentrated, figuring out how we bring all of these things together beyond a panel and beyond our ivory towers and high chairs, and what is the actual action that comes to bring that comfort between the glitz and glam and the success of it, because we're measuring success in some way, whether it is the financial success or the preservation or the archival or whatever the case is. So yeah, that's my thought leading on from that.
Thank you.
Is this closing?
This is closing.
Okay.
Get it off your chest.
I want to close by saying that I firmly believe that collaboration is what is required for us to move on and move forward. I want to, this is wood. I almost don't want to say it, but let me preface by saying this year, 2024, was my last year being involved in Carnival in the way that I have been involved. Because much like you in my initial days, not really like you, but I'll come back to you. In my initial days, the thing that used to drive me the most was seeing the masqueraders in all their glory and seeing them so happy on the road. That was the driving force for me. And within the last few years, that has diminished in terms of seeing that joy. It is more of this. And I've parted ways, quote unquote, for now with Carnival, because I want to focus perhaps on more things like this, more things like getting the entities that need to be involved, collaborating, because I mark my words, in years to come, if we continue in the way that we are going to lose our stance and stature as the Mecca. We need to come together, we need to collaborate, and we need to make it better. We need to show people every aspect of Carnival. And we need to also, of course, distinguish between Carnival and masquerade. But we need to show people every aspect of it, from the Canboulay come right down.
I would just close in saying this was amazing, and I think a lot will come out of this discussion. Just when people sit and internalize it, even if we sit and look at the video afterwards, the conversation has always been there. I think we just stirred the pot a little more, and hopefully, if people like you all at the helm, things will just start to go in the right direction. And I believe in the possibility of both sides coming together for us to maintain that Mecca status and push it to the next level.
Okay, why not?
I'll paraphrase Lovelace. He says, what about the ordinary people? The people who give you the pan and the mass and the calypso? The people who fight for freedom? What have we done with what they have done? What have we done with their love? I agree. It shouldn't just be on the mass man or the pan man or the calypso singer to take that risk, right? If we recognize that these things are important to us, then we have to ascribe a value to it. And the government has to play its part, but I also demand and insist that private sector also has a role to play. And currently, like today, we had the term the Big Five. Everything goes in that direction. Big eye does kill dog, I like to say. So, you're doing your thing and you approach, and it's like, no, not for you, because you ain't sexy enough or splashy enough or flashy enough or, so how do you get that support? Shrews talks about getting $100 here and $500 there. And how do we, if this thing's so important to all of you, are we prepared to put money where our mouth is and take that risk together and help mitigate the risk for the people who inherently have no choice but to take the risk because they feel in that vibe and they have to get it out of them, otherwise they go dead. And we have to give thanks for those people, the makers of the music, the makers of the costumes, the makers of the corn soup, everybody. They all have a part to play in making the festival. That's what we say, this festival of festivals. And it have opportunity and all of it for everybody to learn a little something. Because the commercial consideration was there in the original masquerade, you know. You had to pay the robber, you had to pay the devil, you had to pay the baby doll, you had to pay the payroll, you had to pay for the performance. Right? There's a difference between paying to see me play a mass and just approaching the whole thing with an eater food attitude. And I think that's where the challenge, the eater food complex and the maker money complex, and getting people who serving drinks to say, you know what, I feel like going to play something next year, and talk to 2-3 partner and get them to play with them. You know, I realize the people who listen from the Juve over the years, because there's block off for the Spain and keep them out, they start doing their own Juve. So I think next year I want to go St. Paul Street for Juve. You used to be Trinidad? There's a movie. Jamet. You understand? The gangs of Port of Spain was there from since emancipation time. The Don Juan, the Maribor, now the 6 and the 7 and the 8. You understand? I'm not taking time to understand the history and see everything continue and say the Jamet is who gave anything that define us. And look what the Jamet culture is doing now, celebrating a culture of death. Because that is their reality. And if we now look at that and say that is invitable and help to turn that around. So that's why I don't want to commend Prophet Benjamin and them. Sasha and them, sorry, for the call. And Mr. King and them, you know. And they then issue the call for the rest of us to answer the call. And all of us have answered the call because something is at stake. And if we don't recognize that something is at stake, well, we're there badly wounded.
Ladies and gentlemen, tell me this panel does not deserve a round of applause. I'm now going to ask the head of department, Dr. Susan Wood, to give a vote of thanks and to take us out of this evening.
Hi, good evening, everybody. And it is really so beautiful to see us under the salmon tree. I think we need to do this more often. Yes? So I don't want to stand on ceremony. I really wish to thank the panel to agreeing to participate in this. I think the university has a specific role, as Wendell says, in opening up these discussions that are not, initiated by vested interests. We don't have any vested interest, but to have national conversations. Yeah. So we will continue to do same. So we want to thank you, Wendell, Harmony, Kim, Keon. We also want to thank the audience for coming out. We wish to thank all the people who worked hard behind the scenes to make this happen. We have a very committed committee, so I want to call them out. Sean Samad, Deborah Matthews, all the artwork you're seeing, Yui outside is Debbie, right? Douglas Wade Brunton, right? My fellow head of department, Mr. Jessa Marie, who is here, Dr. Marsha Pierce, right? And Mr. Omari, the man behind the scenes, Ashby. And of course, the people who are behind the technical support, Roger McFarlane and his 2 student assistants. Thank you so much, Roger, for giving us light and for giving us sound. Yes. And then, of course, all the administrative staff and the marketing department of the University of the West Indies. Thank you, everybody. We are here next week. We are under the tree again. And we are forwarding the conversation. So much of what we talked about. And I mean, I have so much to say, but then I don't have nothing to say. You know what I mean? It's like, I just have to lie down. You understand? Because there's so many emotions, so much grief, so much pain, but so much joy, right? So we're taking it forward next week. Carnival as love and liberatory practice, right? My paws are raising. Because that's what it's about at the end of the day. Right? And Freddie talked about national identity. Well, it's national identities. And this thing is always about contestation. And because we won, how many years ago in 1888, 1884, Jamet Carnival, they're the powers who always want to take back. Right? So you can't rest on your laurels. It's always about fighting. It's about tension. It's about balancing. Right? And we can't expect anybody to do that for us.
I'm tired of that. I tried all of that, been there, done that, been on boards and so on, right? We have to do that in the spaces where we are. As I tell my students, you have to wind down low wherever you is. Wind low down to the ground and come back up, right? Wine in your space. And by whining in your space, you're creating space as you whine. That's what it is, about creating space. So next week we have, chaired by a member of our department, Dr. Charissa Granger. She will moderate, and we have Rayshawn Perker coming out of Tobago, because we are about inclusion and diversity, right? Alicia Bartels, who's an independent mask maker, and Jamie Filbert, who's a wow woman, right? So we're taking it back to where we think it ought to go. We have to say what we want out of Carnival, right? Nobody's to tell we what we should do. We need to determine what that is. And that's a conversation that's ongoing, right? So that's next week. And then we close out this rounds of the conversations on the 26th, restating Carnival's place in society, because we have to admit that we are to Marsha put it so nicely, a crisis, but I would say we are to some kind of change, a crossroads, a conjuncture. And so the panelists for that day would be John Arnold, Selvin Noel, otherwise known as Mr. Shack, and I would moderate. So we look forward to seeing you under the salmon tree for the next 2 weeks. It's nice, huh? Right. Tell a friend, right? Good. And on behalf of the department, I'm going to ask Douglas to give our little tokens to each of our panelists.
One of the big seven, the big five.
Definitely not, right? And we have some t-shirts for you all. You all will get them in due course. Thanks, everybody. And, and in closing, we always close. We start with I am. We open the space. We have to close the space, right? So we invite
Mr.
young
Keith.
panelist, Mr. Keon Batiste, to take us home. Close the space. Thanks.
Very nice. Come right in. Yeah.